Today, our podcast, we are going to talk about the California State University System, which has grown to 23 campuses throughout California, as far as Chico to San Diego. California has become a hotspot internationally for prospective college students, and the CSU campuses work with a volume of students to become productive graduates in our society. We're fortunate to have Valerie Grace with us today. She is an outreach specialist at San Francisco State University to help us learn more about the California State University System, known as the CSUs. Valerie Grace has always had a passion for people and education. She graduated from the CSU Monterey Bay with a BA in Social and Behavioral Sciences and received an MA in Higher Education and Student Affairs from the University of San Francisco, USF. As a proud product of the CSU and an alum from CSU Monterey Bay, she has deemed herself lucky to be able to put her passions and education experience to use as a proud representative for San Francisco State University. Welcome to the podcast, Valerie.
Hi, thank you for welcoming me. That was awesome.
Yeah, so we just want to ask you some questions so our listeners could understand the beauty that CSU offers to so many students and how to be a possible student over there. So one of the questions is, what makes California State University so unique compared to other public institutions?
The amazing thing about CSUs is that with 23 campuses all working together to provide high-quality hands-on education to students, we're not only the largest four-year higher education system in the nation, but we also serve the most ethnically and economically diverse student body in the nation. So all 23 campuses work together to provide holistic education experience for our students and also make sure to be accessible to every single student who wants to be a part of the CSU system.
Yeah, and many people are not aware that the CSU system produces half of the bachelor's degrees in California, and we're not a small state whatsoever. And 1 in 10 employees in California are CSU graduates. What are the variables that produce this great success that you have seen working at the CSU system?
So the awesome part is that the CSUs don't work individually. We really work together to help support the students. So there's always going to be a student who there's such a diverse population of students, there's going to be a CSU for a student out there. And the fact that students have so many options just within our system itself gives them a lot of opportunities to choose who they want to be and choose what they want to study within our system, right? So like you said, we have so many great alumni that are produced from the CSU system. Just from San Francisco State alone, we have a producer from Pixar, Jonas Rivera, who's produced a whole bunch of other things. And those connections with alumni really help strengthen our CSU impact, because then people can see, wow, this amazing person graduated from this CSU, and it gives them kind of more of a, instead of just looking at the education part, that it kind of shows them the future of what they have here at CSUs.
Yeah, and I think I saw a brochure from San Francisco State that you produce one of the richest women. She's like the 40th richest woman in the world. So you've also produced millionaires, which is not a bad deal. Going to college. Many students are also not aware that there's something known as service area CSU campuses. Can you explain to our listeners what they are and how it impacts what's known as this index score, which is that certain GPA and test score needed along with their course requirements for admissions?
So each CSU is dedicated to first supporting their local area and then supporting the entire California state, right? So when we talk about service area, we're talking about the local area that each CSU campus would prioritize if they are impacted. For example, SFSU's service area a few years back, when we were impacted, included Marin County, Sonoma, Solano, San Francisco, San Mateo, Alameda, Contra Costa, Santa Clara, and Napa. So for students in these areas, if they met the minimum requirements, they would be guaranteed admission to San Francisco State. For students outside of the areas that I just talked about, they would need more competitive GPAs and our SAT scores or ACT scores to be admissible to our campus. That's the same thing for each CSU campus. Each one will have their very own service area, and if they're impacted, students who meet minimum requirements will be admissible to that campus. For anyone not in the area, they'll have to have more competitive GPAs and or test scores.
So every student in California has a service area and should consider a service area CSU campuses, because if I apply to another CSU, how challenging it is to get into that campus can vary year to year.
Yes, exactly. So even if it's not going to be that student's first choice, it's always good to have a backup, because if you're within that service area, you'll be able to be admissible to that institution.
Yeah. And so you talk about minimum requirements. What are the minimum requirements to be considered for a CSU system?
Yeah, of course. So minimum requirements for a CSU is one, we need all students, if they're coming in as a first-time freshman, we need all students to graduate high school. First things first. Second, we need students to take the A through G courses. And if they don't know what they are, it's basically 2 years of history. We also need students to take 4 years of English, 3 years of math, although we do recommend 4 years of math, physical science, a biological science, 2 years of a language other than English, and it has to be the same language, a year of visual and performing arts, and a college prep elective. So those are the A through G courses, and we need students to pass those with a C- or better. Along with passing high school and taking their A through G courses, we also need students to take the SAT or the ACT. We don't need both. We just need at least one. And then depending on their GPA from the A through G courses and their test scores, it'll come up with an eligibility index. We have a calculation for that students can actually go and use on the calstate.edu website. And based on their eligibility index, that'll determine whether or not they're admissible to the CSU that they're applying for. Now, each CSU does have a different eligibility index depending on whether or not they're impacted, depending on whether or not the program itself that they're applying to is impacted. So there's a couple more factors besides those minimum requirements that we do ask for students.
Right. So it could be a little bit more complicated depending on the campus and the major. So definitely do your homework and reach out to whatever outreach specialist at that campus to ask those questions. And you mentioned also, for California residents, if you want to look for that A to G list, it's at ucop.edu/doorways, because both the UC and the CSU system look at those A to G courses. But if we have some listeners who are from out of state, you'll just, they don't have an A to G list, but you'll look at their classes, but still those core requirements, the English, the math, the science, the other ones that you've mentioned are things that you're still going to be looking at for admissions.
Yes.
Right.
And make sure that you have those. Yeah. Go ahead.
No. And so since you were talking about impacted majors, what are the factors used for admissions for CSU campuses? Like, and how may they vary? So like if I'm a student going into impacted major, let's say engineering, broadcasting, or others, what are some other elements that you guys will be looking at besides the minimum?
So it depends on the institution and that program itself. So there, most of the times it's going to be on a competitive GPA or test score. So instead of the minimum 2.0, depending on how impacted a program is or the institution, we might want at least a 2.5 or a 2.7. For some programs, it might be as high as a 3.4, right, depending on how impacted that program is. Some programs will look at the types of classes that the student has taken. For example, if a student wants to, let's say they want to go into nursing and they're trying to transfer into the nursing program, they would need to take certain science classes and pass those with certain grades in order to be admissible for that program.
Yeah, so basically, whether you're a high school student or someone who's considering transferring into a CSU campus, research that campus, ask the office, ask for that program to see what are those minimum requirements. It could be because they may have different variables. So research as soon as possible. And the CSU system calculates GPA using, like as you mentioned, the A to G approved courses. But how is that GPA calculated?
So we look at all the students' A through G courses, their 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Now, we do care that they take Like, for example, English, they took that first year of English, their ninth grade. We do expect them to pass that, but that's not going to go into the GPA that we personally look at. 10th, 11th, and 12th grade years, your A through G courses, and we look at weighted courses. So if a student has taken an AP course or an honors course, that'll give them a bump up in their GPA.
Okay, fantastic, right? And so basically they're looking, so if I had some hiccup moments freshman year, it's okay, but make sure that you have like those English courses with a C or higher, because you still need those like 4 years of English. So you still have to meet those course requirements over the 4 years. And, and I know like students can look to find out more about the CalState system through calstate.edu. And when they apply, they go to calstate.edu/apply. But what do you see through your years of experience, some common mistakes students make when applying to the CSU campuses?
Yes. So one of the biggest things is they don't input their classes correctly, or they forget a couple of classes. And that doesn't necessarily mean if they put their classes wrong, that doesn't necessarily mean that they will be automatically denied. It just means more steps for the students to go through, right? For example, we've had a couple of students who sometimes completely forget to input their entire senior year. Students who for fall applications, or if students want to come in the fall, applications are open from October 1st through November 30th, the year prior. So if anyone is graduating in May next year, they'd be applying for CSUs in the next few months or so. And sometimes they'll forget that they're taking these certain classes their senior year, and they don't input it into their application. So then institutions have to go and ask for an in-progress transcript. And so that just needs more steps for the students. It takes us a little while longer to determine whether or not they're admissible, or they'll forget to put in that they've retaken a class, so they still have to send in their transcripts and things like that. That's usually one of the biggest things that I've seen. And it's usually a hard obstacle because students then forget to send in their transcripts, and then we have to follow up, and there's just a whole bunch of steps that go along with that. But otherwise, this is something new this year, is that students, if they would like to apply for the Educational Opportunity Program, which is a service program that's dedicated to supporting low-income first-generation college students, they forget to sign up for EOP, and now the EOP application is within the CalState Apply application. So some students have forgotten to apply for EOP there, and then so that kind of defers them from being part of EOP.
Great. So basically, key thing is try to go to your registrar or counseling office to get that transcript. Know what your A to G list through the ucop.edu doorways. Fill out all your courses. Don't forget senior year. Senior year matters. And follow up with those emails. And then if you are first generation college bound and low income, you may have other opportunities like the EOP program that the CSU system offers, which is an amazing program that provides additional assistance for students to become future college graduates as well. So, but for most students, the CSU application, sometimes students are fearful of starting it because they think, oh my God, I'd have to turn in an essay or portfolio. Is that the case for the CSU system?
Nope. For CSU system, we're pretty straightforward. All we look at is your grades and your test scores, and whether or not you graduated from high school, or you're going to be graduating from high school soon. We don't need any personal statements, letters of recommendations, anything like that, unless your students are going into a program that requires those. So for my expertise is in San Francisco State, so a lot of my examples will be for my institution. But so, for example, for San Francisco State, in general, to get into our campus, all students need would be, like I said, graduate from high school, pass their A through Gs, and take the tests. However, for some of our programs, they do require that students submit community service hours or a letter of recommendation from one of their professors to get into certain programs. And that supplemental application portion is going to be part of the CalState Apply. So that's something that